Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle, and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, as folk across the world are led to believe monkeypox will come for them at any minute, has hysteria become enshrined in the modern public health playbook? I'll lay out why we must not stand for these same old COVID scare tactics in my digest next. Then I'll get the thoughts of my superstar panel, the Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and former Brexit Party MEP Belinda Lucy. Plus, could the frenzy over monkeypox hand unprecedented powers to the World Health Organization, which seems determined to make us relive our lockdown nightmare?
Oh, is it over? No, it's most certainly not over.
Well, Dr. Carl Hennigan, director of the University of Oxford Centre for Evidence-Based Medicine, says we cannot trust a bureaucracy that puts politics before data. He's here at 10:20. As a new picture emerges of Boris Johnson drink in hand at a Partygate event he escaped being fined for, are the PM's enemies going to use the publication of the Sue Gray report to try and force him out of office undemocratically once again? We'll debate today's revelation and the potential fallout at 10 p.m. With Sturgeon launching a push for a new referendum in the craven Scottish MSM, is her former mentor Alex Salmond right to accuse the First Minister of using independence as a political shield? Well, a man who isn't afraid to put his head above the political parapet, Nigel Farage, gives his scathing verdict on Sturgeon at 9:30. As this Union Jack display for the Queen's Jubilee is outrageously likened to something out of Nazi Germany. Why are the far left so contemptuous of our flag and love of country? Neil Oliver has a stern word or two for those self-flagellating Brits in The Outsider at 9:45. And as the nation awaits a verdict in the Wagatha Christie case, the big question being asked around water coolers nationwide: are you Team Rooney or Team Vardy? Well, two of our very own warring wags go head-to-head tonight in the clash. Nickham McLean supporting Rebecca and Lizzie Cundy backing Colleen. And your verdict coming up too. With Black Lives Matter coming under fire for its seemingly dodgy finances, I hear from Nick Buckley MBE, who was forced out of his own charity for criticising the organisation. Now he's demanding answers and an apology as to why he was sacrificed for speaking the truth. That's tonight's Uncancelled at 10:40. As fuel poverty is predicted to hit 40% of homes, should Rishi Sunak go ahead with plans for a temporary windfall tax on energy companies? Plus, what might this weird viral PDA between Harry and Meghan say about the state of their marriage? Our body language expert, Judy James, is on the case with her analysis. That's all in the Media Buzz coming up throughout the 10 hour. Plus, which daytime TV icon could be named today's greatest Briton for their life-saving heroics at the Chelsea Flower Show? GBUJ back at 10:50. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. Let's go. Just one thing first, though. The mainstream media campaign to remove Boris Johnson from office has stepped up a gear with the publication of a photograph by ITV News showing the PM toasting departing Press Secretary Lee Cain in November 2020, while the rest of us mugs were only legally allowed to socialise with 2 households. So, this is the picture. It's been dubbed Fizzgate already, and the police have had it for months, meaning the Prime Minister was crucially not found guilty of any crime by being at this event. Of course, as I've been saying since last December, I'm totally livid those in power were downing champagne while ruining our lives for months on end. But the scandal is not that they had a leaving do, but it is that we were not trusted to act equally responsibly in our own lives. Now, since this story first emerged in December, much has changed. Boris Johnson has returned life in the UK to close to normal, faster than anywhere really in the Western world. I said I would forgive him for his indiscretions if he freed us from COVID tyranny, and it's so far so good on that front. Multiple heads have also rolled at number 10 Downing Street to create a more professional organisation. Does the media's obsession with the scandal in the midst of European war and a once-in-a-lifetime generation cost of living crisis mean we should undermine the landslide election win achieved by Boris in 2019 to deliver Brexit? No. Are we in an elected dictatorship as claimed by ITV's apparently impartial political editor Robert Peston? No. Is it time to move on from Partygate by ensuring ordinary Brits are never inflicted with these ridiculously civil liberty sapping laws again? Absolutely. And we'll have more on this later on in the show during the Media Buzz with my superstar panel. She's back, the columnist for the Daily Express, Carol Malone. Senior reporter for the newspaper, Benjamin Butterworth, here too. He's fizzing over, I think, about this Boris picture. And the former Brexit Party MEP and political commentator, Belinda de Lucy, back with us too. But before all of that, the news with Tamsin Roberts.
Dan, thank you. Good evening from the GB newsroom. Pictures have emerged appearing to show the Prime Minister at a gathering in Downing Street during lockdown. In the images obtained by ITV News, Boris Johnson is seen raising a glass in a room with a number of others. According to the broadcaster, the image was taken on the 13th of November 2020. 8 days earlier, Boris Johnson had imposed England's second national lockdown. A Number 10 spokeswoman says the Cabinet Office and police had access to all relevant information during their investigations, including photos. Meanwhile, Downing Street has confirmed the meeting between Mr Johnson and Sue Gray while she was investigating lockdown parties was first suggested by Number 10. Officials say they asked for a meeting to discuss the timings and publication process of her findings. Labour claims the meeting was an attempt to undermine the report. In other news, speaking today about the cost of living crisis, the Prime Minister says he's not in favour of introducing new taxes. But as pressure grows to introduce a windfall tax on oil and gas companies, Boris Johnson says no option is off the table. Speaking at a school in South East London, he suggested more support will be offered to help households.
I'm not attracted intrinsically to new taxes, but as I've said throughout, we've got to do what we can, and we will, to look after people through the aftershocks of COVID, through the current pressures on energy prices that we're seeing post-COVID and with what's going on in Russia.
A former Conservative MP has been sentenced to 18 months in prison for sexually assaulting a 15-year-old boy. Imran Ahmed Khan was expelled from the Conservative Party and resigned from the Commons after he was convicted last month. The 48-year-old carried out the attack in 2008. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says the world faces a turning point since Russia's invasion of his country. Speaking at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland, Ukraine's leader urged countries to increase pressure on Moscow. He says all foreign businesses must leave the Russian market so they're not associated with what he called war crimes. The World Health Organization says there's no evidence the monkeypox virus has mutated, but it expects to find more cases in countries where it's not typically found. The number of confirmed cases of monkeypox in the UK has risen to 57. Health officials in Scotland say a small number of smallpox vaccine shots effective against monkeypox have been stockpiled. The Queen's attended the Chelsea Flower Show a day before the event opens to the public. The 97-year-old monarch, who has mobility issues, was driven around the gardens in a buggy. She's attended the event more than 50 times during her 70-year reign. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Dan Wootton tonight.
How damn predictable. Just as the untrustworthy World Health Organization meets in Geneva, Switzerland this week to try and push through a treaty giving them unparalleled powers during the so-called next pandemic, the scaremongering over a previously little known African ailment called monkeypox is all of a sudden off the scale. So millions of folk all over the globe now believe monkeypox will be coming to infect them at any moment. And the doomsday health bureaucracy bored, now that they can no longer use COVID-19 to terrify and control us on a daily basis, has immediately spluttered into action, with the mainstream media once again proving to be their willing messenger.
Now, as Kate was saying, there's 9 cases, confirmed cases in the UK. For everybody waking up this morning, what's the sort of the concern rate they should put next to monkeypox?
Monkeypox? What is this horrible thing, and how worried should we be?
How worried should we be by this outbreak of monkeypox?
The US president has said everybody should be concerned about the monkeypox outbreak.
So monkeypox in the main is a self-limiting mild illness.
So how worried should people be about it? I mean, there are reports, as you will have noticed this weekend, of someone being treated in intensive care.
How concerned are you about it?
You know, I'm modestly concerned.
Latest update on what's happening on the ground in Ukraine. More from Professor Michael Clark throughout the programme this afternoon. Right now, no, we're going to take you live to Geneva. The World Health Organization is holding a question and answer session on the recent spike in monkeypox cases.
Oh yes, and they ran it uninterrupted. Then today on Newspaper Live blogs, we're told there's a red alert for monkeypox. Monkeypox contacts will be legally forced to isolate for 21 days. A vaccination strategy is being planned. Super spreader events are to blame, according to those doomsday scientists called up by the Today programme, who they seem to have on speed dial these days. And what's next? Border closures and local lockdowns, I bet. But none of this makes any sense. In 2021, over 200 people were being monitored for monkeypox in the US. Nobody cared. This year, there's been a handful, and the US president is procuring vaccines and warning everyone to be concerned. This is manipulation, gaslighting, pure and simple. But that was always going to be the problem with the hysterical reaction to the coronavirus based on China's zero-COVID hellscape, rather than decades of calm Western thinking when it came to pandemic planning. Now, hysteria has almost become enshrined in the modern public health playbook. The slightest hint of a new health threat and all hell breaks loose. Have we not put up with enough of these scare tactics? In an article for Unheard, Toby Green, author of The COVID Consensus, writes, "What's alarming is not monkeypox, but the extreme responses on both sides. It looks like yet another wave of media hysteria of the kind all too common since COVID-19 emerged 2 years ago. Talk of automatic lockdowns for monkeypox are also alarming. This is not likely to be what Bill Gates calls the next major outbreak, though some appear to be preparing to treat it that way." We've had these sorts of health threats, by the way, on a regular basis since World War II, and very few turn out to be anything to cause us any stress, certainly not something to question the freedom and liberty of the Western world. Do you remember all those folk who told us the coronavirus pandemic would be an opportunity to, quote, build back better?
Pertinent question to ask, how do we build back better?
Build back better.
Building back better.
To build back better.
To build back better.
Build back better.
Build back better.
Build it back better.
Build back better.
Build back better.
Build back better.
Build back better.
Building back better our economy.
Well, it means that we're going to have a lot of building back to do.
Some would say to build back better. We would say to really have a great reset.
This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset. This is our chance to accelerate our pre-pandemic efforts to reimagine economic systems that actually address global challenges like extreme poverty, inequality, and climate change.
Forget what those globalists all have to say. We now know what building back better actually looks like. It looks like inflation like we haven't seen before in my lifetime. It looks like supply chain issues causing chaos across the world. It looks like the worst child mental health crisis we have ever seen. So don't be sucked in by the health establishment who want us to go there again for monkeypox. Just remember, they want us to be scared. They want us to be on constant alert. And if we go down that path, we're waving goodbye to the free world that most of us would do anything to protect. To respond now, my superstar panel, columnist for the Daily Express, Carol Malone, senior reporter for the newspaper, Benjamin Butterworth, and former Brexit Party MEP and political commentator, Belinda de Lucy. Belinda, we're being gaslit here, aren't we?
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, the timing of it, everything. Monkeypox has been around for decades on the continent of Africa, and no one cared when Africans were getting it. It's all of a sudden now a massive thing because there are a few cases in the UK. It is worrying how much airtime this is getting. It's not new, it's not deadly. It's really hard to catch from someone else. You actually have to rub your skin on the pustules to get it. And there's a vaccine. You know, the smallpox vaccine is 85% efficient. So there's no need for any of this hysteria. My worry is it's not just about the viewers being manipulated. It's our young, our teenagers who are being having their nerves shredded constantly by either Greta with her Armageddon hipsters or the COVID nutters who are going around saying you're killing grannies unless you wear a mask 24/7. And this will filter down to children. And yet you have so many programmes at the moment about the mental well-being of our young, but they're being constantly triggered by this catastrophising.
We'll look at Sly News tonight. Special half-an-hour emergency programme on the monkeypox. Sly News give us. Sly News earlier today, crossing live to the World Health Organisation monkeypox briefing. Breaking news alerts about the number of monkeypox cases. They want to repeat the COVID cycle.
And poor monkeys. I mean, what have they ever done for anyone? As far as I know, the pox is
getting a bad rep at the moment, aren't they? Benjamin Butterworth, I mean, goodness, I mean, look, I feel sorry for you because you totally bought into all of the COVID hype. You wanted to be locked up in your home for months and months on end. Are you terrified about monkeypox too?
No, I'm not terrified. But I tell you what, in a sophisticated modern democracy, people want to know about these things. It's in the interest of public health. And if you look at what happened at the very start of the COVID pandemic in China, authorities and media there tried to hush up the reality of what it is. You sound remarkably like them. I'm going to have to call you Politburo Dan because you want to hide the truth from people who want public health.
Cover-up by the Chinese Communist government of
and you sound a lot like them.
Of a new virus. As Belinda just said, this is a virus that has been around for donkeys.
It is, but not in this country and not in these numbers. Now, I don't think there's any reason for us to be particularly nervous, but I tell you what, if someone had monkeypox, I would want them to do the isolation period. I wouldn't want to be anywhere near them. That seems sensible. I don't know what problem you have with the fact that people are interested in this to take care of themselves and to keep others safe. What's wrong with that?
I have a problem with the hysteria that has been stoked by the mainstream media and the World Health Organisation completely unnecessarily. And I predicted this.
Well,
I predicted this the moment there was another health scare, because these People are addicted, Benjamin. They are addicted to the power and the control that they had over all of us. And folk like you in the mainstream media should actually grow some balls and stand up to them for once.
Well, I'd rather not grow monkeypox pussies, thankfully, on my arm. That's what we're trying to avoid here. And the truth is, it was the WHO and the Chinese government that tried to hide the starts of COVID. We are better. This is the lesson to learn. We are better and safer when we discuss these kind of viral diseases that come about, and everyone would like to be aware of what to avoid.
Karen Malone, half an hour special reports in prime time because there's a handful of cases of something that's been around for decades. I'm sorry, that is over the top.
I think what's really... I'm somewhere in between these two guys. I think, you know, people have to read about this virus. They have to know what it's about. And its natural home is in wild animals. So, and you have to have really close, prolonged contact with a person who catches it to catch it yourself. And you know, it's a DNA virus, which means the chances of mutation are very small. The risk to the general population is really low. So people have to read about this. They can't be scared. But my worry with all of this is that we have become a very fearful society because of COVID. Absolutely. You know, I see it today. I see people walking around with masks all of the time. I mean, I want to say to them, why are you doing this? And I just think this and what we're seeing on television now is going to make those people retreat even more. You know, our mindset has changed. You know, you said there was, in your opening, you said there was an outbreak in the States in 2021. There was an outbreak here in 2018. Nobody cared. Nobody batted an eyelid because it was a handful of cases. It's still a handful of cases in this country. It's about 21, we think, 20 in England, 1 in Scotland. But you know, all of that said, the scientists have been slightly surprised by the spread of this currently because it's not acting as it normally does. It has had an unpredictable spread. So that's what we have to take care about. We have to just watch how it goes. But, you know, to get it, you have to be... It's not like with COVID, if, you know, you can catch it in a room with droplets. You have to be in really close contact to get it. You have to be touching someone to get it. So it's nothing like COVID. It's nothing, and it's not going to be another COVID. And we're not going to be into lockdowns, which is what people have got to keep in their heads.
I know the problem is, though, that you've got folk in New York already saying masks should come back into England. People want to treat any new ailment like they treated COVID. That's the problem I have.
You have to follow the money a little bit here. I can imagine all the sort of mask companies whose profits are dwindling now, suddenly changing into glove companies. Oh, gloves for children to protect you from monkeypox with flowers and Mickey Mouse on them. You've got to find, you know, when you see who's making money out of these kind of...
And what about the vaccine too? Because now there's a lot of talk, we've all got to be vaccinated for smallpox because the herd immunity might be
People make money out of fear. So that's what we need to consider.
People like you, Benjamin.
People like you who sit there trying to whip up conspiracy theories that people are trying to flog gloves off monkeypox.
That's hardly a conspiracy theory.
Of course it's nonsense.
Do you know how capitalism works? Look at what happened.
Of course it's nonsense. You know, this is in the public interest, and the truth is, one of the reasons the media is covering it more than they would have otherwise is because there is a much greater interest in these conditions because we've seen how wrong it can go if we misread it.
We've been terrified unnecessarily for the past 2 years. Final word, Carol.
We can't ignore it. And, I mean, all you guys, you just can't... We have to just...
I'm not saying ignore it.
We just have to monitor
I'm saying cover it
and
with
be calm
the perspective it deserves.
Yes.
And believe me, that is not half an hour special reports in prime time on Sly News trying to whip everyone up with hysteria because their ratings are currently so low. Karen Malone, Benjamin Butterworth, Belinda DeLucy, my superstar panel who will be here all night. Now coming up, with Sturgeon launching a push for a new referendum in the craven Scottish mainstream media, is her former mentor Alex Salmond right to accuse the First Minister of using independence as a political shield? Well, Nigel Farage will give his verdict on that at 9:30. But first, as the nation awaits a verdict in the Wagatha Christie case, are you Team Rooney or Team Vardy? Well, Nicola McLean and Lizzie Cundy, who know what it's like to be a wag, will go head-to-head on this next in The Clash. As always, I want to know what you think. I mean, let's be honest, we've all been talking about this privately over the past couple of weeks, right? So you've seen what went on in court. Who are you backing now? Dan at gbnews.uk. Tweet me using the handle at GBNews. We've got a poll running there right now too. Fascinated with the results? I'll bring you them after the break.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before. So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Nigel Farage and Neil Oliver still to come this hour, but first it's time for The Clash. Now, it's the sensational trial that's been gripping the nation, but the toxic and unnecessary Wagatha Christie High Court showdown has also had us all wondering why the hell did they let it get to this point. Colleen Rooney made her famous claim about Rebecca Vardy leaking stories to The Sun back in October 2019. And since then, it's become a slow-motion personal and professional car crash with a slew of tawdry allegations dissected in court. As I said in my recent column for the Mail Online, I've always liked Rebecca, and I understand her very real frustration that most of the media and virtually all influencers swallowed Colleen's "It was Rebecca Vardy's account" post hook, line and sinker without any evidence, effectively unleashing a torrent of trolling on the pregnant wag. But equally, I did find Colleen and Wayne's evidence pretty heart-wrenching. The unexpected fallout has taken a brutal toll on Colleen's marriage to the former footballer, which, let's be honest, was hardly the strongest before Wagatha Christie. Working with high-profile journalists is not criminal, it's sensible. That's why most of the biggest stars in the world do it. And the Rooney's media manipulation over many years, oh my goodness, that knows no bounds. Now, David Sherborne, who's the same bloke, by the way, who unsuccessfully represented Johnny Depp in his case against me, even tried to drag me into this case. I just don't understand what this bloke is about. But now it's not a jury trial, so we're waiting for the judge to give her verdict. But I want to see where you stand in this bombshell battle now that you've heard all the arguments from the High Court. So simple question tonight. Are you Team Vardy or Team Rooney? Let me know your thoughts. I'm fascinated to know what you think on this. Dan at gbnews.uk. Tweet me at GBNews and I'll bring you those results very shortly. But doing battle on this tonight, in the Vardy corner, we have the broadcaster and wag Nicola McLean, and fighting Rooney's side, the TV personality and former wag Lizzie Cundy. So, Nicola, let me start with you, because it is Rebecca who, let's be honest, has had the most criticism throughout this trial. You're still supporting her, though. Why?
I think the way Rebecca's been treated is absolutely appalling. The way she's been treated in court, the things brought up, things that she did when she was 22. I'm sure that we can all sit here and say that we did things 20 years ago we regret. Me too. So Rebecca's literally just been, they went out to assassinate her character, and they've done that. So Rebecca loses anyway, because the Rooneys have been extremely clever with the stuff that they have presented in court about Rebecca. It has nothing to do with you know, her selling a story on Peter Andre when she was 22 has nothing to do with this. It really, really doesn't. So I feel dreadfully sorry for the way she's been treated by the court, by as you say, influencers, by other celebrities. You know, it's just been, who do you prefer? Everyone seems to prefer Colleen because, you know, she's seen as, you know, a victim that we've all grown up with because we've known her for so long. Becky isn't someone that everybody loves. So do you know what? It's fine to absolutely not only ruin her pregnancy, make her think she was going to miscarry, but also now to just totally discredit her in every way. If this was Wayne and Jamie on the stand, the reporting wouldn't have been the same. It's totally sexist and misogynistic. I just feel dreadful for both of them. But Rebecca's my friend, and I still stand by the fact that, you know, she's been treated horrifically.
And of course, when it came to that kiss and tell story on Peter Andre, she insists that it was something that she was forced to do as a result of a previously abusive relationship. Lizzie Cundy, why are you backing your friend Colleen Rooney?
Well, I'll tell you why, Dan, because this could have been prevented. Colleen tried 3 times to stop this from going to court and reaching out to Rebecca to try and get some sort of truce, handbags down and walk away from it. But Rebecca wanted her day in court, insisted that she did get there, and sadly, it's just been, as Nicola said, like a character, you know, assassination of Rebecca. But we've seen Rebecca there without her evidence. I mean, sadly, it was in the bottom of the North Sea, which was critical evidence. And sadly, in court, that's what matters. It's facts, it's evidence. It's not gossip, it's not hearsay, it's not the name calling, it's evidence. And Rebecca didn't seem to have any. And then, you know, her laptop suddenly is damaged. It's one thing after another. So there's Nicola feeling sorry for Rebecca, but Rebecca didn't have to go through this. Why? I mean, we've had a pandemic since this first started. With, you know,
it makes no difference. It really makes me laugh when people keep on talking about this pandemic. So what?
When Colleen had reached out to her, and you know, 3 times.
Okay, so let's just let Nicola respond to that. So Nicola, Lizzie's point is that Colleen tried to settle this case numerous times out of court, and it was Rebecca who actually allowed it to go to court. How do you respond to that?
Do you know what I'd really like to know is when's the last time Lizzie actually spoke to Colleen? Because Colleen has taken Lizzie off her private Instagram account. They no longer follow each other on the private. So do you know that Colleen tried to settle it through the horse's mouth, or just what you're reading? Like, well,
just let Lizzie respond. Just let Lizzie respond.
Nicola, she was invited to my party, which was on Thursday, and she let me know that she was going away with Wayne. So I don't know why you have this horrible sort of slur mudslinging on me. I've known Colleen since 2006. I don't know Rebecca. From what I hear, I don't want her as a friend, to be honest, because some of the name calling, which she does, is just been horrific. And I'm sorry that it hasn't gone her way, but she hasn't had the evidence. And we're talking about facts. We're not in the football players' lounge now, Nicola. This is court, and you need evidence. And frankly, Rebecca didn't have any.
Nicola?
Okay, so what I'll say is I know that, you know, let's be honest, Lizzie, you like a gossip. So, you know, I think that, you know, I just think I'm not actually being mean about anyone. I'm not being mean about Colleen. Genuinely, I'm not. But you're talking about evidence. Let's see if Colleen's got the evidence, because the actual meaning, if you read the judge's meaning, I think you'll find that Rebecca will still win this, because Colleen hasn't got the evidence of the meaning of court. And as you quite rightly say, Lizzie, you seem to know a lot about court. So the meaning, I don't think that Colleen's got the evidence for that. But I wasn't in court. I just feel like the way one woman's been dragged through it has been really difficult to watch for me personally.
Yeah, because Lizzie, the thing that I find very surprising about the Rooneys is that they've gone to court and tried to be all holier than thou. Well, you know, Lizzie, I was at The Sun for many years. This idea that Colleen and Wayne didn't work with The Sun and didn't manipulate the media constantly is a complete joke. They did.
Yeah, but Dan, we all know they've had their ups and downs. Wayne's been on the front of the paper more times than should be on the back of the papers. Let's be honest, that's true. But it was really tough for her. She had stories going in the papers week after week after week. It had a knock-on effect. I don't know if many people know, Colleen has lost their sister Rosie. It was really having a damaging effect, not just on her relationship with Wayne, but on other members of the family. And she had every right to stop it. And she did warnings to Rebecca. She told me that she did try and warn. She did try and reach out and say, look, this is going on. But the stories kept coming. And Colleen had no choice but to put that Instagram post and say it's Vardy, because she feels 100% it was her. And now suddenly, everyone that was going to help, Rebecca in this case wasn't there. Caroline Watts, the PR agent, she suddenly, she can't make it. She's got a fragile state of mind. The phone with all the messages suddenly ends up in the bottom of the sea. The laptop is suddenly damaged. You have to admit that it's farcical. It's like a scene from Dynasty. Well, and I'm sorry, the yellow Chanel suit and lots of tears are not going to win this case for her, because I know about this judge. Her name's Justice Stern. She did Priti Patel's bullying case, Dan, and it does not take lightly for evidence suddenly disappearing.
Nicola, it is a fair point, isn't it? There were certain gaps, you might say, in the Vardy evidence, because we do know, Nicola, that the stories were being leaked as a result of the account. The big question is whether Rebecca actually personally knew or whether it was her representative leaking the stories.
So Caroline Watts, one of my best friends for 17 years, I know that for a fact that she did drop her phone. Everyone's making light of this situation. Caroline's ended up suicidal over it. So I think it's unfair to bring her into it. And you both know Caroline personally, and you can both say that Caroline's a nice woman. Caroline's known things about lots of things. Yeah, she's known lots of things about people that haven't ended up in the paper. So I don't think we should now start dragging Caroline for it as well, because she's already in a very fragile state of mind.
No, I completely agree with that.
Caroline, she wasn't there being able to stand up. Her name was brought in because Rebecca said she shared her account, Nicola, and sadly Caroline has been brought into it, and I know Caroline as well. And I was there in the box with the Sun newspaper box at the NTAs. I took the picture that has been shown everywhere of Rebecca and Caroline. Actually, Dan, you were there.
I was there too.
Very sad. But what a waste of money! Millions of pounds. We're in a cost of living crisis, economic crisis here. All that money, what a waste. I just wish the girls could have had a glass of champagne and sorted this out over a bowl of nuts, and wouldn't have come to this. It's a real shame, and it really has split.
Could they have done that, Nicola? Was there a way for Colleen and Rebecca to just settle this amicably?
No, because they both believe they're right, and both of them deserve their truth to be told. Both of them do. And, this whole Lizzie, you're very good at it and I admire you, but this whole bringing in the cost of living, we're all feeling it. I get it. But these women aren't, because these women have got the money to do it. You don't go to liable court unless you've got millions. So, they've got the money to do it. It really bothers me when people constantly talk about the money and then say they should have given it to charity. Why should they? They both do a lot of work from charity. I know Rebecca does, and I'm pretty sure Colleen does as well. They deserve their day in court. Listen, Rebecca knew this stuff was there to come out. She was willing for it to come out to clear her name. So it shows how passionate she feels about it, because she's been the one that's really been dragged through it.
I do not believe for 1 second Rebecca Vardy isn't regretting going to court. She was in tears most of the time, so stressed out. Two of the England players now gone against each other. I think it's a really sad state of affairs, and I don't believe Rebecca Vardy wanted to be in court. It's a horrible place to be, so stressful. And she looked so stressed out, was crying throughout the whole of her testimony. She was in tears the whole way through. So I don't believe she wanted to be in court. I think it's a hell of a waste of money, time, resources, and the knock-on effect it's had on all the family members is awful. And I think it's the worst decision ever.
Nicola, my understanding is that Rebecca Vardy has no regrets. She felt she needed to do this to stand up for her family, and she believes it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, do you know one of the things I love about Rebecca Vardy is that she's unapologetically Rebecca Vardy. She won't be, I'm not saying that she had a lovely time in court. I know firsthand she didn't, but she would go through it again to clear her name. She wants to clear her name. And the only way to clear her name was this way.
Because it's a hell of a waste of money, and I'm sorry, I don't think she's going to win. I really don't.
Yeah, you said
and
that.
I think
and Lizzie, And Lizzie, just finally, I presume you believe that your friend Colleen Rooney's career has been enhanced by this court case.
Well, I do. I think we've seen a very honest girl that's spoken her truth, and I think everyone has felt for her. I'll be honest, and they've seen what her family have had to go through with these stories. And as I said, Rebecca didn't have any evidence; it's on the bottom of the sea somewhere. And she did. Colleen have all her ducks in order, and I think she's going to win, and I really do think she will.
Well, thank you for being part of our very own Battle of the Wags, representing Team Rooney, the original wag, Lizzie Cundy, representing Team Vardy, one of Rebecca's good friends, Nicola McLean. Really appreciate it. So who do you agree with on this? Well, Luby on Twitter says neither of them wasting all that money and energy on a childish she said spat. They should have just had a good old-fashioned fight in the street, pulled each other's hair screaming like banshees and then gone for a fight. From Tessa on Twitter. I believe Rebecca Vardy. Otherwise, why go to court? And from Anne on email. Hard to believe Vardy with the phone lost overboard, the deleted messages and the language in the revealed messages, although Nicola McLean did just say that was completely true. Your verdict now in. 17% of you say you are Team Vardy. 83% of you say you are Team Rooney. Now, coming up, after a Union Jack display for the Queen's Jubilee was outrageously likened to something out of Nazi Germany, Neil Oliver and I will ask, why are the left so contemptuous of our flag? That's The Outsider soon. But first, has Nicola Sturgeon used Scottish independence as a ruse to distract voters from her dismal performance as First Minister? Nigel Farage will give his take just after the break.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Neil Oliver and Carl Hennigan are still to come, but first it's time for What the Farage. And in an extraordinary attack today, former SNP leader and First Minister Alex Salmond has accused his former protégé, scheming Sturgeon, of using Scottish independence as a political shield to deflect voters' attention from her government's failures, of which there are many, let's be honest. Salmond's criticism of his former deputy came after Sturgeon announced her delusional plans for a futile push towards Indy Ref 2, writing in the Scottish National, basically an SNP propaganda sheet at the weekend. Queen Nick declared, We will shortly begin publishing an updated prospectus on the opportunities that independence can offer Scotland, a prospectus that, yes, is upfront about the challenges, but also one that does not shy away from the immense opportunities of independence. Salmon responded brutally by saying, sooner rather than later, the multiple problems of political delivery of this government, trains, ferries, census, etc., will impact on its support. The cause of independence must not be allowed to suffer from the day-to-day troubles of the government. So, Nigel, is Alex Salmon right that Sturgeon is now using independence as sort of a political shield, really?
Well, he raises a fair point. I mean, they are failing at virtually everything, education in particular. I remember as a boy, everyone saying that Scotland had the best education system in the Western world. It now has one of the absolute worst, despite this having been stated as one of her clear priorities, but now she's sort of rather conveniently dropped that. The same goes for health delivery. You mentioned ferries briefly in the introduction, vast amounts of money being wasted. They are incompetent, they are hopeless, they are useless. So yes, re-raising the independence issue is of course useful to her because that's where the core support comes from. However, here's my real issue with it. It's not independence. Every time in 2014 in that referendum, when I heard mainstream media referring to independence for Scotland, it wasn't. It was separation from UK, separation from London and Westminster, and its replacement by being a tiny little speck in the European Union governed by the French and Germans. And if honestly she wanted a campaign for Scottish independence, I would have some respect. I wouldn't agree, but some respect for the integrity of that position. As it is the most enormous con job. And yet, the Conservatives in Scotland, after a brief upward blip, suffered badly on May the 5th in the local elections. The Labour Party, in what was a one-party state of Glasgow and Edinburgh, were found to be so corrupt and so hopeless they're gone, and there's no way back. So this bizarre situation where even if there was a referendum, Indy Ref 2, they'd lose it, probably by a bigger margin than last time, and yet they remain the dominant party in Scotland. It all wants a working out, it really does.
Indeed. Also wanting working out, Nigel, is this bizarre juxtaposition that Sturgeon has had to take on foreign policy in an independent Scotland. Because, of course, the SNP, totally against nuclear weapons, right, but have now conceded that they would have to be a member of NATO, which just doesn't go together, I'm afraid.
Yes, I mean, they want to keep the pound, but of course be separate from the Bank of England. They want to be in NATO, but ditch Trident. I mean, the whole thing is all over the shop. And Salmon, of course, thinks that his Alba party can provide a real challenge. And yet, if we're honest about it, he hasn't done that well, has he? He hasn't done that well. You know, he was a driving force behind making the SNP a big party, the biggest party in Scottish politics. And yet, that vote hasn't transferred on a personal level. Whether that's a result of the endless accusations against him, which incidentally, you know, he won his court case over, but somehow she's the queen bee. I want to tell you on a personal level, I've met all the political leaders, you know, over the last 10, 12 years. I've appeared in national debates with them, been in green rooms with them, done big programs with them. I've met leaders from all over the world. I've met the Pope, the Dalai Lama, the US president, the French president, the German, I mean, you name it. I've met them all. But I want to tell you this. The single most unpleasant, sour-faced, humourless person of all the people I've met among world leaders is Nicola Sturgeon, bar none. I mean, it isn't just that she's wrong, she's deeply unpleasant, and I also think very hypocritical with it too.
So what happened when you met her, Nigel?
Oh, I mean, it was June, I think. I've never seen a frost like it, you know, for the middle of summer. I've met her more than once. There is almost no recognition, no acknowledgement. And I remember a few years ago going up to Edinburgh to do an event at which and at the time, UKIP was riding high in the UK opinion polls, and I wanted to expose the fact that independence wasn't independence. And I was met by a group of yobs, a large group of SNP yobs, all with very dilated pupils. I can't think why. And, the way I was treated was just, it was appalling.
Yeah.
And yet, from Sturgeon or Salmond, they both said, well, you shouldn't have come north of the border. I mean, if a group of my supporters had hounded Peter Mandelson getting off a train at St Pancras, I would have been the worst person that's ever lived.
Oh, yeah.
And
would have been leading the BBC
part
News.
Of this problem is an uncritical media. And
big time, especially in Scotland.
Yeah, Scottish nationalism, lovely. Welsh nationalism, lovely. Irish nationalism, for some reason, no problem. Any hint of English identity and you become a monster. It's weird. So my guess is she's going to be there for a few years yet. The scales have not yet fallen from the eyes of a Scottish public. They will, and Salmond is right about that, but it's very hard to see what the alternative is.
Indeed. Nigel Farage, brilliant analysis as ever. And of course, Farage back at 7 p.m. tomorrow night here on GB News. Thank you so much, Nigel. But after a new picture emerged this evening of the PM with a drink in hand at a so-called Partygate event he escaped being fined for, will Boris Johnson's enemies now use the publication of the Sue Gray report to try and force the PM out of office yet again? My superstar panel and I will debate this and take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in the Media Buzz after 10. But first, are lefties embarrassed of the Union Jack? GB News star Neil Oliver joins me next with a few stern words for those self-flagellating Brits in The Outsider.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle, and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A first look at tomorrow's newspapers coming up after 10. But first, Neil Oliver is tonight's outsider. And more proof today, as if we ever needed it, that the intolerant far left in this country truly despise everything British. Hysterical, high-profile lefties have slammed this spectacular display of 150 Union Jack flags erected on Regent Street in London for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, despicably likening it to Nazi Germany. The truly crazed broadcaster India Willoughby tweeted, "When the Queen dies, wouldn't be surprised if Boris appoints himself Führer and assumes total control. That's how close I think Britain is to Nazi Germany." Archer Ramona, Femi Olawale wrote, people are getting the wrong end of the stick about all the flags on Regent Street. There's nothing wrong with the flag decorations, no matter how excessive. The issue is what the flag represents. Right now, it represents blatant fascism. It's our job to fix that. And Paul Bernal, who's unbelievably a professor in information technology at the University of East Anglia, quipped, the only things that are missing are the tanks. Neil, they're seriously comparing a celebration of our wonderful 96-year-old monarch reaching 70 years on the throne to a deplorable regime that gassed millions of people. I mean, is this proof that the far left in this country have finally lost the plot?
Well, the one-word answer to that is yes, although I think the people you're talking about lost the plot long ago, or may have been born plotless. I looked at the picture, and I think it looks spectacular. I think when it comes to flags, as it happens, I think purely from a design perspective, I think the Union Jack is a particularly good flag. I think it's a particularly brilliant piece of iconography, and I think the effect of the 150 flags there is so striking. And the tragedy of using language like Nuremberg in relation to that flag, you know, before there were many forces raised against fascism, Nazism in Europe in the 1930s and the 1940s. It was the Union flag. It was Britain that was an early adopter of the necessity to stand up, regardless of consequences, and fight back against fascism and Nazism. And the Union flag was symbolic of that. And there's also something deeply strange, hypocritical, that the contempt that's reserved for all things British, including the flag, it's always and only contempt for the home team and the things that the home team has traditionally held dear. I mean, look how fond so many of the same sorts of people are of the European Union flag, for example. Yeah. And that's a flag that represents not a nation, not a country, not a people, but an unelected bureaucracy. An unchallengeable, unelected bureaucracy. Or look at all the appearances of the Ukrainian flag recently, especially in the social media biogs of the self-righteous. You know, so often the same people that say the British flag is a symbol of empire, of colonialism, of nationalism, they can't wait to wave and celebrate someone else's flag, anyone else's flag. So there is a rank hypocrisy at the base of all this.
Indeed, Neil. And I have to say, I was walking down the Mall last night, checking out the preparations ahead of the Platinum Jubilee and looking at all of the flags myself in front of Buckingham Palace. And all I felt was a massive sense of pride. And what was fascinating, Neil, is that all of the voices surrounding me, they were all foreign tourists, not speaking English. And they were blown away by it as well. So I think any of these people sneering at Britain are so out of touch, because this Platinum Jubilee is going to go around the world. It's going to show that we've finally opened up after 2 years of lockdown hell, while other countries remain caged and muzzled. And I think it's going to be a great thing for this country that we can be proud of, regardless of our political stripes.
There's a peculiar but symptomatic joylessness about a lot of the people who decry pride in and love of country. I was listening to Nigel Farage there talking about Nicola Sturgeon and the Scottish nationalists, and there's a profound joylessness around Nicola Sturgeon. She looks like the sort of person where good times go to die. And there's always that joylessness that's there. And how empty, how hollow-hearted do you have to be in the presence of national pride, not nationalist pride, but love of country, as is embodied in, say, a grand and colourful display of the flags. How can you be in the presence of that and not feel the corners of your mouth turning up? That desire to smile at what is, after all, a simple pleasure. And I think it's always worth remembering, I think, that where there's a globalist agenda in the background all the time, where there's a desire by some for a one world government and open borders and all the rest, if you're after if it's a world to be run by unelected oligarchs, it makes sense to encourage or to instill in people a sense of shame in the past, in heritage, in traditions, in predecessors, in the ancestors. Because if you can make people ashamed of the past, and then by association, if you can make them ashamed of the present that they're living in, you make those people rootless. You unmoor them. Yeah. You take away their points of navigation, and you leave them adrift with no sense of where they belong. And people who are made rootless with no sense of belonging in that way are then vulnerable to fantasies about a utopian future. Discard all the things that your parents cared about and your grandparents cared about. It was embarrassing and shameful. Trust us, follow us, and we'll lead you towards... Utopia literally means the place that doesn't exist.
Indeed.
That promised land that demagogues always try to take populations towards. And this confected outrage about a flag. And as I say before, the Union Jack flag is a spectacularly good flag. It makes me think sometimes of the contempt that perpetual adolescents have for their parents. They're embarrassed by mum and dad, and they're embarrassed about the things that mum and dad seem to hold dear. And yet at the same time, they're living at home, they're living under that roof, and they're taking advantage of all the benefits that mum and dad have worked for, and traditions that count for something and matter for something. And that desire by those people to sneer at things that the mass of the population care about, ordinary people, it speaks to a narrow ruling class or a narrow urban elite, I don't know exactly what, who just want to sneer at the things that the mass of the British population care about. They love the country, they love the Queen, they love the traditions and the heritage and all the pomp and ceremony. They love that, and why shouldn't they? Because those are things that make people smile, give them a sense of identity, and remind them that they're part of a bigger story and something that's bigger than themselves. And if you can't look up at 150 flags, flying in the wind over the tops of people smiling and happy, then I don't know what's absent from your soul.
Well, you make me very proud to be British. Neil Oliver, beautiful analysis as always. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, as the World Health Organization meets in Geneva to sign an authoritarian pandemic treaty, conveniently timed just as the hysterical mainstream media goes into monkey...
It's most certainly not over.
The head of evidence-based medicine at Oxford University, Professor Carl Hennigan, speaks out for the first time on the hysterical organisation's liberal power grab. New pictures have emerged of Boris Johnson with glass in hand at a Partygate event where he was crucially cleared of all wrongdoing by police. A bash that, as far as I'm concerned, should never have been considered against any rules. But will the Prime Minister's enemies use this and the Sue Gray report to try and undemocratically force him out of office? I'll debate that next with my superstar panel, the Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and former Brexit Party MEP and political commentator Belinda de Lucy. As Black Lives Matter bosses come under fire for using donations to line the pockets of their friends and family, I'll speak to one man who had his life destroyed when he accused the group of being crooked 2 years ago. Nick Buckley was sacked from the beloved charity when he founded, but he joins me tonight feeling vindicated and wanting answered and uncancelled at 10:40. Fuel poverty is predicted to hit 40% of homes. So should Rishi Sunak plough ahead with plans for a windfall tax on energy firms? We'll debate that as the cost of living crisis deepens at 10:30. And what does body language expert Judy James make of this Meghan Markle smacker? It's got the whole world talking, doesn't it, about the so-called chemistry with Prince Harry. And brace yourselves for this blast from the past.
Why I'm in this, ladies and gentlemen, is because I wanted to tell you, and I wanted you to be the first to know, we're about to do a new series of challenge.
The clock is ticking. Challenge Annika makes a triumphant tally return after being revived by Channel 5 after 30 years. So we'll explore all of that and more in the Media Buzz throughout the next hour. Your first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages will be coming up next, and for the remainder of the show too. Before I crown tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass just before 11, so do stay up with us tonight. But first, the news at 10 with Tamsin Roberts.
Dan, thank you. Good evening from the GB newsroom. Pictures have emerged appearing to show the Prime Minister at a gathering in Downing Street during lockdown. In the images obtained by ITV News, Boris Johnson is seen raising a glass in a room with a number of others. According to the broadcaster, the image was taken on the 13th of November 2020. 8 days earlier, Boris Johnson had imposed England's second national lockdown. A Number 10 spokeswoman says the Cabinet Office and police had access to all relevant information during their investigations, including photos. Meanwhile, Downing Street has confirmed the meeting between Boris Johnson and Sue Gray while she was investigating lockdown parties was first suggested by Number 10. Officials say they asked for a meeting to discuss the timings and publication process of her findings. Labour claims the meeting was an attempt to undermine the report. In other news, speaking today about the cost of living crisis, the Prime Minister says he's not in favour of introducing new taxes. But as pressure grows to introduce a windfall tax on oil and gas companies, Boris Johnson says no option is off the table. Speaking at a school in South East London, he suggested more support will be offered to help households.
I'm not attracted intrinsically to new taxes, but as I've said throughout, we've got to do what we can, and we will, to look after people through the aftershocks of COVID, through the current pressures on energy prices that we're seeing post-COVID and with what's going on in Russia.
A former Conservative MP has been sentenced to 18 months in prison for sexually assaulting a 15-year-old boy. Imran Ahmed Khan was expelled from the Conservative Party and resigned from the Commons after he was convicted last month. The 48-year-old carried out the attack in 2008. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says the world faces a turning point since Russia's invasion of his country. Speaking at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland, Ukraine's leader urged countries to increase pressure on Moscow. He says all foreign businesses must leave the Russian market so they're not associated with what he called war crimes. The World Health Organization says there's no evidence the monkeypox virus has mutated, but it expects to find more cases in countries where it's not typically found. The number of confirmed cases of monkeypox in the UK has risen to 57. Health officials in Scotland say a small number of smallpox vaccine shots effective against monkeypox have been stockpiled. The Queen's attended the Chelsea Flower Show a day before the event opens to the public. The 97-year-old monarch was driven around the gardens and exhibits in a buggy. Her Majesty has attended the event more than 50 times during her 70-year reign. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Dan Wootton tonight.
Tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz. The first front pages are in one story dominating the Metro leads. with a lockdown in one for Boris Johnson after he's pictured holding a drink at a lockdown-breaking party in November 2020. The Met did not give the PM a fixed penalty notice over the event, and we'll have more on that soon. The Eye also leads on that Boris Johnson toasting among the bottles, noting that number 10 has admitted asking Sue Gray for a private meeting. There's apparently a sense of calm at Downing Street ahead of the publication of her report. Now, my superstar panel back with me now, columnist for the Daily Express, Carol Malone, senior reporter at the Eye newspaper, Benjamin Butterworth, and the former Brexit Party MEP and political commentator, Belinda de Lucy. Now, breaking tonight, as you just saw, the Partygate campaign to topple the Prime Minister is continuing apace after ITV News published those new photographs of Boris at a Downing Street gathering during lockdown. It was a farewell party, actually a work farewell party. So the 4 images show the PM raising a glass of fizz at that event for the then Director of Communications, Lee Kane, on the 13th of November 2020. Critically, the Met Police were aware of these snaps and the Prime Minister was still cleared for attending the event. That position was confirmed by a Number 10 spokesperson this evening who said the Cabinet Office and the Met Police have had access to all information relevant to their investigations, including photographs. The Met have concluded their investigation and Sue Gray will publish her report in the coming days, at which point the PM will address the Parliament in full. But none of that stopped the usual suspects calling for the PM to resign today. Hilariously, that mob included Angela Rayner under investigation for her own lockdown breach right here on video, thanks to the Beers with Care scandal.
It's clearly a party. I mean, it's clearly a celebration. He's cheersing and putting his drink up in the air and having a toast. I don't know what he's toasting because the rest of us were all devastated, losing relatives. I lost relatives during COVID and many other people have got their own stories about that, and I think it's just despicable.
No, that's just grim now. I actually also lost relatives to COVID, but those comments from Rayner actually make me feel ill. It's time we stop so crudely politicising the deaths of our loved ones from a virus unleashed by China in a craven bid to unseat a democratically elected Prime Minister. So now we await the publication of the Sue Gray report, where the same statements Boris haters have been making for the past 5 months will be repeated again. The senior public servant was accused by senior Tories at the weekend of politicising her report, with an anonymous newspaper report suggesting Gray was, quote, surprised Boris had received only 1 fixed penalty notices. Parties were bad. These photos demonstrate that the lockdowns were an unnecessary evil and Brits should never accept our freedoms being snatched from us again. But none of this is resignation material. The PM was cleared by police for attending this event and all the others that there may be photographs linked from in the coming days. So all this latest chapter in the Sorry Partygate saga shows is that there should be an amnesty, in my opinion, not a resignation. And it's time we moved on as a country. Carol Malone.
I completely agree. You know, when you talk to normal people in the street and you talk to them about this, they're saying we're sick of this. And I think what's happening is, I was just talking to a guy who was chopping a tree down in my garden today, and he said his view is that it's a witch hunt now for Boris. And he says, I support Boris more now than I did a year ago because of what the left are doing. And I thought that was an interesting point of view. And I do think it's true. And I think it's also very interesting that the left are also now attacking Sue Gray, and they're saying that she's been nobbled by Boris in some way. You know, this is the woman who just a few months ago they were saying that her integrity and her independence were impeachable. Now they're saying she's been nobbled by Boris, which is actually very insulting to her. But the bottom line is, I know people lost relatives, and I'm very sorry for them. I know that people had parties when they shouldn't have. But I want us to move on now. This is all 2 years ago. People are bored. There are much, much more important things to be looking at. And I would like to know where ITN got those pictures from. Because if they came out of, if someone in the Sue Gray camp released those pictures, well, then it clearly is a witch hunt. And I don't think it's Sue Gray's job anyway to be judge and jury. Yes, it is her job to find out what happened. Yes, it is her job to say the government may not have maintained the standards they should have maintained, but it is not her job to get rid of a democratically elected
Well, you
government.
talk about a witch hunt, the bloke at the front of it honking the horn is a certain Mr. Benjamin Butterworth.
Oh, the scant hypocrisy of you. If photos of Keir Starmer or a Labour politician doing that had emerged, you'd be doing
Well, they kind of did.
They've already emerged. It's not on photo with Keir Starmer, it's on video. And he's got a beer in hand and curries on the table.
What is this? Am I going to be allowed to speak? The truth is, if photos of a Labour politician doing that had emerged, you'd be doing the can round this studio. The scant hypocrisy.
Here's the video, mate.
The scant hypocrisy.
You obviously haven't seen that.
Look, do you know what? Yeah, but we're talking about Boris Johnson and what emerged tonight. There he is, clutching a goblet of wine with 5, 6, 7, 8 other people, 5 bottles of wine on the table, a bottle of gin, and he stood up in Parliament and was asked, were you at a party on the 13th of November? And he said no. We now know that is a lie. It doesn't matter whether you supported the lockdown measures or not. This is a Prime Minister that is a compulsive liar, and the truth is, and polls show it, whatever your tree cutter says, people in this country have changed their view on Boris Johnson because they know he is a liar, they know he is untrustworthy, and everyone who followed those rules has a right to be angry at that wine-guzzling, lying Prime Minister.
Sue Gray's report means nothing because the Prime Minister was convicted of one
And we now know tonight that's wrong, and I would bet money, set your alarms, the useless Met Police in tow to this Tory government, they will be re-investigating this.
Hundreds of photographs, hundreds of pages of evidence. They would have tried to get Boris on anything. They could only get him for one thing.
So tell me then, there you see 8 people with 5 bottles of wine and some gin. Do you think that's a party?
Half a glass.
Doesn't matter how much glass he had.
He was there for 10
minutes. Well, in the photo.
And he toasted
doesn't matter how long he was there or how much wine was in his glass.
To the police.
No, hang on. Do you think that was a party?
Well, it was a leaving.
Do you think that 2 people were allowed in a room together? Do you think that broke the rules?
Do you know what? But even if
come on.
Well, I think that probably there were people in that photo, and we know that there were people in that photo who did break the rules because they stayed, they partied, they downed the gin.
So you accept Boris Johnson broke the rules?
No, I don't.
No, he didn't say that.
So you don't think...
Are you listening to me?
I am. You just said there are people in that photo who broke the rules.
Just stop talking for 1 second, just listen, because you might learn something for once. Boris Johnson was probably there for a very short amount of time to raise a glass for his departing Director of Communications, Lee Kane, who had worked for him over the duration of the pandemic. The point is, Benjamin, you on the left were more than happy to accept the Met Police investigation.
So you accept he broke the rules?
If Boris had got a hell of a load of fines, and you would be here saying got a hell of a load of fines and he should go.
Dan.
I have to trust that the Met Police looked at this event, judged based on the rules and the laws in place.
What a naive man you are. You look at that picture and you think that followed the rules?
The Met Police had a team of top detectives
12.
scouring for evidence, and they could only get them on one.
That's not the question I asked.
They were prepared to give Boris Johnson fines when they thought he broke the rules because they gave him a fine for being in a damn room where his wife...
No, they were trying to get the Prime Minister off because the Prime Minister ultimately is his boss. They were trying to get the Prime Minister off. That's why they gave the lightest fine they could for the weakest case.
You are accusing the Met Police of trying to get the Prime Minister off the hook.
Every person watching this and looking at that photo can see that for themselves.
Where do you have that information from? Where's the evidence?
Because we can see him.
Where's the evidence of what you've just claimed?
In the photo that you just showed, where 8 people are carrying wine, having snacks and gin and wine together when the law said 2 people could be in a room.
Boris was investigated over that.
Belinda de Lucia,
You know, they didn't send a questionnaire out about that incident.
But Belinda de Lucia, this is hilarious, isn't it? Because the left were more than happy to go with the Met when they issued Boris and Rishi Sunak the fine. Now, all of a sudden, he says the Met are in the tank for Boris Johnson.
It's
that they wanted to get him off.
Standards. The left seem to have this thing where it's do the crime, do the time unless you think like the left and then do half the time. Or actually don't be found guilty of anything because you've got the right political thinking. This is what happens
None
all
of the
time.
things I said.
People right-wing seem to have so much more punishment towards them when they make mistakes, when they slip up. But if you're on the left, you get
Quite clearly not.
Free. You're desperate to keep this whole Partygate on life support machine. People are bored of it and want to move on. I've got Partygate fatigue. I'm exhausted. And I have to say, Boris's critics have convinced themselves that Boris is literally the devil incarnate. They are victims of their own hysteria, demonising Boris way beyond reality into some kind of freak they're now all frightened of. Boris is a normal human being. He's a bit flawed.
He's not a normal human being. He's a compulsive liar.
What he doesn't do is parade around like a saint.
OK, well, Benjamin, you can't answer a straight question, Dan. 8 people, 6 bottles. Was that legal at the time, in your view?
I just said to you, I don't believe that Boris broke any law there, but I think probably some of the other people, if they stayed, if they drunk the gin. But you know what, Benjamin? I'm going to wait for the report.
Well, the truth is that we can see that with our own eyes. And what a naive person you are to look at that and buy into Boris's lies.
I'm evidence-based.
Well, you're clearly not, because your view hasn't changed since the evidence emerged.
Who we know lied over the parties was Keir Starmer, who lied about the attendance of Angela Rayner, who lied about why he was there, who lied about
you
how
have
many
to
people there.
obfuscate and get around this story because you can't face the truth.
To stand up and say what you just said today, I mean, it's hypocrisy writ large.
Now,
it's
look,
crazy.
I've got to move on to this because an intimate moment between Prince Harry and Meghan Markle has got tongues wagging all over the world, but for all the wrong reasons. The Duchess of Sussex was spotted planting a huge kiss on Harry as she congratulated him on clinching victory at a polo tournament in Santa Barbara in California. She presented the trophy to the players before kissing each teammate on both cheeks, but when it got to Harry's turn, he really got the royal treatment. Now, lots of folk have been trying to decipher what was going on with this smooch, with many critics branding the encounter cringe and awkward. Well, there's only one woman who can get to the bottom of this for me. Our very own body language expert, Judy James, who has given some forensic analysis that might surprise you.
So back in 2018, we had the Courtney and Travis of the royal family performing a very different kiss at polo and a very different power dynamic as well. The kiss was passionate and Meghan was quite submissive. She threw her head back, we got the bearing of the neck. The kiss went on for quite a while. It was almost get a room time, very loving and quite sexual. This recent polo kiss has a very different power dynamic. Harry bends in a very similar way, as though he wants to do another quite passionate kiss, puts his arm around his wife's waist, lowers his head. But Meghan's very much in command, control and steer mode here. She places both hands on his face. She turns it into a less passionate kiss. It's slightly more tempered, maybe just a peck. What I love is that she still gets lipstick on her husband's face, and then she takes this almost parental role of wiping it off in front of everybody. And this gesture, it is quite nurturing. It's a bit like your mum dropping you off at the school gates and getting a hanky out at the last minute and wiping your face with it. So we're seeing a much more dominant Meghan, still very loving, but very much more in control here now.
A much more dominant Meghan. Judy James, my goodness, she's got her finger on the pulse when it comes to that relationship. And some rather more joyous royal news. Now, the Queen, well, she looked blooming marvellous today as she made a surprise appearance at the Chelsea Flower Show in London. Her Majesty happily toured the Royal Horticultural Society event in a £62,000 golf buggy weeks after she missed her own Queen's speech in Parliament because of mobility issues. The 96-year-old monarch looked delighted to be out and about at the Society event, beaming as she inspected lots of vibrant plants and flowers. She was equally as colourful herself there, decked out in a buoyant pink number. But more importantly, her appearance at the flower show gives the nation a boost that she will be able to be playing, I think, a real part now in her Platinum Jubilee celebrations in just over a week's time. It followed another surprise appearance at Paddington Station last week in London to unveil a plaque marking the opening of the new Elizabeth line. So what great scenes from someone who's been a perennial in most of our lives. Belinda de Lucy, Benjamin Butterworth, Carol Malone, do stand by because coming up, Should Rishi Sunak go ahead with a windfall tax on energy companies as fuel poverty looks set to hit nearly half of all homes? My Superstar panel will be back to debate that and more as the media buzz continues. We'll have more front pages then too. But next, as the media whips up monkeypox hysteria, is the World Health Organization about to take advantage and make a chilling power grab? I'll quiz Professor Carl Hennigan, the director of Oxford University's Centre for Evidence-Based Medicine, on whether we can trust the WHO with our freedoms post-COVID. He's here live after the break.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. As we speak, the shady World Health Organization is meeting in Switzerland to try and push through an extraordinary pact, giving them unparalleled powers during the so-called next pandemic. But their Doomsday Director General, Dr. Tedros, isn't yet ready to let COVID be consigned to history where it belongs.
Reported deaths are at their lowest since March 2020. In many countries, all restrictions have been lifted and life looks much like it did before the pandemic. So, is it over? No, it's most certainly not over. I know that's not the message you want to hear.
Despite that trademark scaremongering, the craven health bureaucracy has accepted that COVID has lost its power as a weapon of fear and oppression. So just like clockwork, the monkeypox hysteria arrives via the vacuous Wefsels and the compliant MSM, just as the WHO tried to pull off this dangerous power grab. Well, Professor of Evidence-Based Medicine at the University of Oxford, Carl Hennigan, joins me now. And Carl, you're all about the evidence. You've always been about this evidence throughout this pandemic. So let me ask you, is there any evidence to suggest the World Health Organization deserves more power after their pretty appalling pandering to China during COVID and also lots of other things that they got wrong?
Yeah, so Dan, let me declare I've received funding from the WHO and give them advice. So there are some things they do well, for instance, like polio eradication.
Yes.
But what the key now is in this pandemic is there are lots of criticisms, particularly about this authoritarian control of individuals coming through lockdown. So I think the first thing is, which was in your clip, we haven't called an end to the pandemic. And many viewers might be surprised to say there is no actual criteria for what ends a pandemic. pandemic. And so this could go on for many years if we're not careful. The second issue, when you do call an end to the pandemic, you need a review. You should be looking at what went well, but particularly what went badly wrong. And I think this is important because when we talk about the lockdown consequences, remember the issue like test. Well, that cost us 37 billion. Did it get us anywhere? And that was directly from the WHO. But if you think in the developing world, lockdown has had catastrophic consequences on education, social welfare. Many African countries have been out of school for 18 months. Now, when you've done that, reviewed what's happened, then you should come back to the table and say, here's our changes in effect. But the problem is, something odd has happened. The Biden administration in December this year put forward a number of amendments to the international health regulations to change the way we look at pandemic preparedness and acute emergencies. And it's really odd way that has come about rapidly. But actually there are significant concerns, and I see there's over 145,000 people have signed the petition. So it's going to have to be debated in Parliament now to look at this new treaty, if you like, and look at the implications of it.
And do you think we should be as concerned as I feel about this treaty, which feels like a massive power grab by the World Health Organization?
Yeah, I think what we should be concerned about is a small number of people, advisors, certain industry, and certain people like the Gates Foundation, who have the major donors to the World Health Organization, using it as a means to soft power to influence what happens next. What we really should be doing is investing the decisions in our populations, in our individuals. But I think there's lots of people who actually quite enjoyed lockdowns and would like to get back to the position where they could have much influence going forward. And I think this is a soft power agenda. Importantly, the government, the UK government, has 6 months to reject the sovereignty, if you like, of these new ratifications. And I think when it gets debated in Parliament, that will be realised. And I think we will say, look, we're not going to cede control to the WHO in this situation, but we are still going to work with them because the UK is one of the major donors. And there are important issues that they still need to focus on around the world, like I said, like polio eradication.
But Carl, now they're using this summit in Switzerland to terrify us all over monkeypox. And Sky News, for example, they broke off their regular programming today to go immediately to this World Health Organization monkeypox press conference, and they're now doing the same sort of tallies about monkeypox as we had about COVID each day. I mean, monkeypox is an existing illness that has been around for a very long time. There's a vaccine, there's treatment. It's not new. Do you feel like folk are getting very hysterical about this?
Well, I was reading today about, coming out of the COVID pandemic, about a quarter of all people still surveyed are more anxious than when they went into the COVID pandemic. So number one is I think we're at this heightened awareness. Number two is, I don't know if you feel, Dan, this reliance on our phone that gives us 24/7 news.
Awful.
And we're bought into the catastrophizing effect. So I think researchers now, politicians and everybody in the media to get your attention, we need more doom and gloom. And in doing so, I think we're going to have to get used to this new narrative, which is from all sides creating panic and fear. What concerns me now is over the summer, I think, like naturally, acute respiratory infections in the Northern Hemisphere will go down. But come September, when schools come back and things start to re-emerge, we haven't ended the pandemic, and watch the messaging start coming back again at you. New variants of concern, subvariants, there'll be problems. So I don't think this is over by any means. And I'd say get ready for more of this messaging going forward.
Goodness me. I don't look forward to that, but I know you will keep across it with your evidence-based hat on, and that's why your role is so important. That is Carl Hennigan, the Professor of Evidence-Based Medicine at Oxford University. Now, coming up, he challenged the BLM Brigade 2 years ago when they could do no wrong, and he paid the price too. Now, after their finances come under scrutiny, charity boss Nick Buckley feels vindicated, and he wants answers from those who forced him out. He's uncancelled at 10:40. But next, as fuel poverty threatens to hit 40% of homes, should the Chancellor introduce a windfall tax on energy companies in a bid to stave off the cost of living crisis, even though it would be an unconservative move? My superstar panel return to debate that next. We'll have more front pages for you too. Back in 2.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle, and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's 2 questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Let's return to tomorrow's News Tonight now in our media buzz. Lots of front pages are in. You can imagine what they're loving. The Independent leads with PM pictured drinking at lockdown party number 10. They characterise Boris Johnson's premiership as shifting deeper into peril, they wish, after images emerged of him raising a toast at the leaving party of his former communications advisor Lee Kane in November 2020. The Guardian leads with fresh danger for Johnson over number 10 picks. They quote Labour's deputy, Angela Rayner, who says there is no doubt now that the PM lied and broke the rules. The Daily Telegraph also leads on the PM, their former columnist, revealing Met police chiefs are under pressure to explain why he wasn't fined for the toast in number 10. The Daily Mail reports a gloomy scenario of blackouts, petrol shortages and empty shelves if work-shy rail unions succeed in pulling a strike over the summer. The RMT wants its members to walk out in a row over pay, which could see just 20% of train services running across the country. Shame on them. The Times leads with partying PM misled Commons. As the Tories await the findings of the Sue Gray report, the paper reports Boris suggested she should drop her plans to publish it during a secret meeting earlier this month. The Daily Mirror also leading on what's now being described as Fizzgate, with the headline, "How did he get away with this?" And The Sun leads with off-duty cops caught on the field during a fan invasion at Bournemouth's win on May the 3rd. One of those caught on CCTV was top police officer Sarah Dubsher. More on the Media Buzz now with tonight's superstar panel. Columnist for the Daily Express, Carol Malone, senior reporter for the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and former Brexit Party MEP Belinda de Lucy. Now, the agony of the cost of living crisis is putting the Conservative values of the Tory party to the test, with Boris Johnson today admitting, despite his instincts, that no measures are off the table.
No option is off the table. Let's be absolutely clear about that. I'm not attracted intrinsically to new taxes, but as I've said throughout, we've got to do what we can, and we will, to look after people through the aftershocks of COVID, through the current pressures on energy prices that we're seeing post-COVID and with what's going on in Russia. And we're going to put our arms around people just as we did during the pandemic.
Well, one of the most frequently touted remedies for the crisis is a windfall tax on energy companies, which Rishi Sunak is reportedly weighing up, despite previously being passed by the mother of the Conservatives, the late Margaret Thatcher, as well as George Osborne after the 2008 recession. The notion has split the party. Writing for today's Daily Telegraph, Tory party grandee David Davis stressed that, quote, the commitment to low taxes is a fundamental tenet of conservatism and a windfall tax would be unnecessary and unwise. He added, become the party of stagnation in a high-spending, low-productivity state. Treasury ministers should remember that the power to tax is the power to destroy and should be used very sparingly indeed. The idea of a windfall tax is popular with Tory voters, though, with 73% of those who voted for Boris in 2019 approving the measure. That's according to YouGov polling for The Times. And with the worrying claim by Michael Lewis, the chief executive of E.ON, that 1 in 5 households are already in fuel poverty, a rate that could double in October when the energy price cap rises again, could Rishi be forced to act? But Linda DeLucy, the issue that I have is that the Tories need to start cutting taxes. And cutting taxes for everyone is the way to deal with this cost of living crisis and to save the economy. So, actually, I'm not really in favour of a windfall tax because I don't think it's what the Tories should be doing at all.
Well, I don't think the Conservative Party has been behaving in a Conservative way for quite a few years now. So it's no surprise that this is starting to smell like roses now. It is not the sweet solution people think it is. I think there's a risk retrospectively slapping taxes on private companies and ransacking their profits for many reasons. You know, what happens in times where oil and gas prices crash? Are those same companies going to go to the government saying, you know, we gave you all that money a few years ago, now can you give us taxpayers' money back in subsidies? All these things, it's very complicated. We should be lowering taxes, reversing the national insurance hike, getting rid of green taxes, taking fuel off VAT off fuel. This is just paying. This is like doing a little
slash the fuel duty. Absolutely,
yes,
and that would deal with the cost of living stuff. But Benjamin Butterworth, I see you shaking your head.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, you know, we're not talking about a small business here where a tax change might have a serious impact on their ability to function. We're talking about companies that have profits, in some cases, the top 5 are 300% higher this first quarter than they were a year ago. $100 billion of profit has been made by the biggest oil and gas companies so far this year. These are extraordinary amounts of money, and they're more than they expected to make. And the truth is, if you're talking about what's going to get the economy going, well, when your average household has bills £800 higher, which is crippling if you're on a regular salary, well, being able to have this windfall tax to help people to pay their bills is going to give them more money to be able to go out and spend, and that will help the economy.
But Benjamin, it's not a lot of money. It's pennies for these people. How do you know? How do you know that the money they're going to get from the windfall tax is going to go directly into the pockets of the poorest of the poor? How do you know that? We have no idea where the money will go.
Because that's exactly how it should be structured. It should be a windfall tax which goes straight into the pockets of the people struggling to pay their heating and energy bills.
Carol, you say a windfall tax wouldn't actually be unconservative.
No. You see, if I thought it would hurt the gas and oil companies that have been making obscene profits for years, I would say go ahead with it. But it's not just going to hurt them. It's going to hurt British savers who are very dependent on the income from the gas and oil companies, you know, as our pensioners going to suffer, because they're saying that pensions will take a big hit because these companies will either take away or reduce their dividends, you know, the Shell and BPs of this world, and guess who gets the dividend? Pensioners. So they're going to be hit very hard by this. So, and the money this is going to raise, it's going to be $5 or $6 billion. It's not going to touch the sides of the cost of living crisis. And it's nothing compared to the hit the taxpayers are going to take. And I think this could they could raise prices even higher than they're already going to go to make up for what's going to happen. So I think we've got to be very careful. The government has to be very careful to get £5 or £6 billion now, but what it's going to cost the rest of us taxpayers in the long run. What they have to do is find a way of helping people on benefits, people on low incomes, and even the struggling middle group of people who, you know, people say, oh, they're earning that much.
Yeah, well, I just wish they had the guts to do it by cutting taxes.
But I think so. I think you're exactly right.
But this is such a flawed logic. The truth is, if we don't tax...
You believe in a high-tax, big-state society.
No,
you do.
No,
you really believe
I don't. The truth is, the taxes under this Tory government are higher than taxes have been on regular people since the 70s.
That's true.
Yeah,
okay?
which
and
is
so
wrong.
You have a situation where taxes have gone up and energy prices, things people can't escape.
But you not see how those oil companies are going to turn it back on us?
No.
OK, they might get a bit of money taken off that, but they're going to turn it back on us.
But right now, people quite literally cannot pay to heat their homes, pensioners being prime among them. Why should they make $100 billion, 3 times what they made this time last year, when people can't pay to keep their heating on at home? That is not justifiable.
They have already said they will cut the dividends, so that means
of course they're going to make
get hit, and they're already in trouble with talk of. But
they didn't do
a
that
lot of people
last year when they made
on
less
their
money.
savings, and a lot of people are dependent on their pensions, so they're going to be hit really hard. So
people who are watching this at home, who can barely put the heating on, who can barely feed themselves, are going to be asking why a few oil barons make billions when they can't.
Well, my solution though is to give their money in their pocket by taxing or by cutting all of the taxes that Belinda Delucy pointed out.
There's no magic money tree, Dan. You can't just cut taxes in and
we have
spend more money.
We have a fundamental different belief about taxation.
Yeah, you're on the side of the oil barons, and I'm on the side of people trying to.
Don't you think it lets the government off as well? It lets the government off because all they have to do is do the headlines. Yes, windfall tax. Now let's get the votes. When in reality,
I'm sorry, I'm on the side of Margaret Thatcher here. She did a windfall tax because she had some sense.
Oh, it didn't work out well for her.
She had some sense that it helped the regular people.
Different times. Gordon Brown did one too years ago, and he raised $5 billion, and he put it towards, a welfare.
We have to be careful.
Fundamentally, this is an ideological issue, and the Tory party ahead of the election must start cutting taxes, and that is the way that they can put money into everyone's pockets. Now, let's be honest, for most of us, getting into an outfit from 3 decades ago, actually, in my case, from about 3 years ago, would be a challenge all in itself. But not for 63-year-old Annika Rice, who announced today that her iconic TV game show Challenge Annika would be returning nearly 30 years after the original series finished airing. Here's how she did it.
What I want you to do is take a long, deep dive into the bottom of your wardrobe and dig out your 1990s lycra. Now, if you weren't even born in the 90s, don't worry, think clubbing gear, because this is what it looks like. And why I'm in this, ladies and gentlemen, is because I wanted to tell you, and I wanted you to be the first to know, we're about to do a new series of challenge. I know, 30 years on.
Now, for those of you like myself or Carol Malone, who are far too young to remember the original, Challenge Annika ran on the BBC from 1989 until 1995 and saw the lycra-clad host tasked with completing a charitable objective against the clock and on a tight budget by recruiting individuals and companies to help. The show was revived for 2 specials in 2006 and 2007, but will soon be back for a full-blown series, this time on Channel 5. Even Dave, the sound man, is back, although explaining what he's doing in Annika's bed may be the biggest challenge he's faced yet. Belinda Delucy, Benjamin Butterworth, Carol Malone, do stand by, because coming up, which daytime TV icon could be named today's greatest Briton for their life-saving heroics at the Chelsea Flower Show? The first GBUJ reveal of the week with my superstar panel is imminent. But first, he was cancelled by his own charity for criticising BLM. But after the shifty organisation was criticised for its dodgy finances, Nick Buckley wants an apology and an explanation from those who forced him out. He's uncancelled in a matter of seconds, right after we take a look at what's coming up in tomorrow's show.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, were COVID mRNA vaccines the silver bullet they were touted as? The head of a new study into their impact on mortality, Professor Christine Stabile-Ben, reveals her bombshell findings live. Is there any justification for keeping face masks in healthcare settings? Dr. Gary Sidley, who's authored an open letter to UK leaders and the NHS calling for them to be axed, joins me as his campaign attracts thousands of supporters.
And as ever, I'll break down the headlines with my superstar panel. Former Daily Star editor Dawn Neeson, conservative commentator Calvin Robinson, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. But it's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Now, 2 years ago, Black Lives Matter had most of the world so hoodwinked with its divisive propaganda that even repeating the fact it's an organisation based on Marxist principles had you labelled a racist and, in some cases, cancelled. One man who felt the vengeful wrath of the BLM Brigade was charity CEO Nick Buckley, who was sacked from the youth and homeless charity he founded. That was in Manchester, highlighting the group's own mission statement that it wants to defund the police and bring down capitalism. Now, though, Nick is saying, "I told you so," and demanding not just an apology, but an explanation too, after his misgivings about the motivations of BLM were seemingly justified by questionable new tax filings. They show BLM founder Patrice Cullors paid friends and family millions of pounds using charity funds, including the equivalent of nearly £800,000 to the father of her child for creative services, quote. Cullors quit BLM last year after it was revealed she spent a staggering £5 million in a lavish home in Los Angeles using donation money and miraculously built up her own property portfolio. Nick, great to have you uncancelled. You were, of course, called a Nazi on social media for daring to question the cult-like BLM movement, but you must be feeling vindicated now, Nick.
I felt vindicated for well over a year now. I think the gloss has been off BLM for a long time now, especially in this country. You know, last year we had the scandal of Black Mansions Matter when Cullors bought 4 expensive houses, and this last couple of weeks we've got their tax returns, which shows where they've been spending their money. And I'm not saying they've done anything wrong, because I don't know anything about the American tax and charity sector, but just looking what they spent the money on just doesn't feel right and doesn't look right if you've been giving them money.
But it certainly shows, Nick, that folk like you were completely correct to at least question the organisation. As you say, they proudly trumpeted the fact that they were Marxist and wanted to defund the police and overthrow capitalism. Of course, we now know they want to overthrow capitalism unless it means taking tens of millions of pounds from stupid folk who want to donate to them. But, Nick, I think there's a more fundamental point here, isn't there, which is that when we're in the midst of one of these social hysterias, which happen quite often these days because of a social movement, how do we ensure that people like you who propagate critical thinking aren't cancelled?
There's a great organisation called Free Speech Union.
Oh, I love it.
And it was them that got me my job back. Even though I was sacked, it took 5 weeks for me to get my job back, and then we forced the board to resign in disgrace. Because they were disgraceful, they were cowards. They didn't believe in Black Lives Matter. They just believed in themselves, that they didn't want any of the hassle.
Yes.
So let's give the mob Nick, and then we'll be safe.
But that's the key issue, isn't it, Nick? That is the key issue, because it's not just charities, it's also big corporations, small businesses, schools, loads of like sporting organisations. They just want to avoid the social media mob, regardless of the truth, and people have to start standing up for that.
They do, and we need to start holding some of these organisations to account. You know, we need to revisit some of these now, and we need to say to the Premier League, why are your footballers still taking the knee? We need to look at the trustees who sacked me and say, what was going on? Why did you do that? Why were you such cowards? Unless we go back now and start speaking to these people, they all would have got away with it, which then leads the next generation to realise I can be a coward when it suits me and I'll get away with it. And we need to hold people to account, because it was appalling what happened in 2020. It felt like a revolution was coming and everybody was looking after themselves.
Indeed, and we should always be able to question social movements. We should always be able to question organisations. I mean, look at what Black Lives Matter were doing.
They were literally taking in tens of millions of pounds to spend on luxury mansions, and they were able to do that because no one in the media felt able to ask the... And by the way, Nick, I always point this out, but GB News wasn't around then because, of course, we would be doing it. But so few people in the media were prepared to ask questions about this organisation.
Yeah, 2 quick points. The first point is, why is every famous communist, Marxist and socialist a millionaire? So that rings bells with me straight away. And
Bit of a concern, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's always true though, isn't it? You got Bernie Sanders and some of the American politicians. Those 3 ladies there are all millionaires, but yet they claim to be working for the poor.
Yeah. It's easy to be a commie when you're a millionaire, Nick, isn't it?
Not easy. And the second, what made me speak out really about Black Lives Matter was not that they were Marxists, because I don't care, because you should be able to be a Marxist and put your points across. That's absolutely fine. Yeah. It was when I went onto their website and I read they wanted to disrupt the nuclear family, which means to get rid of more men and fathers out of the home. That was when I went, that I've had enough with that, because our number one problem in our country is a lack of fathers in the home. And if we've got an organisation spouting that, that's just going to damage everything even more.
Well, Nick, you've been proven right, so well done for speaking up at the time, and we'll keep in touch. Nick Buckley, MBE, thank you so much. Of course, both sides of the argument here on GB News and BLM say that despite assertions otherwise, an independent audit has revealed that Black Lives Matter finances are strong, the organisation is financially sound, and its leaders have been good stewards of the people's donation. They add it recognises that there is more work to be done to increase transparency. Yeah. Time now to reveal today's greatest Britain and Union jackass. Carol Malone, who's your greatest Britain nominee?
OK, mine's Julia Bradbury. Everyone knows she's a breast cancer survivor. Did an amazing good documentary a couple of weeks ago. She has championed a revolutionary new saliva test that could save the lives of thousands of women under 50 who can't get mammograms in hospitals because they're too young, and people who have a genetic predisposition to. She's saying if this test had been available to her, she might not have had to have a mastectomy, but this could be around to help thousands of other women.
Good on her. Benjamin Butterworth, your nominee.
Well, mine is Ainsley Harriott, because at the Chelsea Flower Show, his sister had a bit of a fall. She fell straight into the pond and was having a nightmare, and he had to rescue her. So it was, ready, steady, dive as he went in to get his sister out. And I just thought, what a lovely guy, and what a good thing to save his sister. Look at that.
Look, there's the Mail Online's report of what went on, and it truly did look horrifying. So incredible scenes at the Chelsea Flower Show. Belinda DeLucy, your nominee.
My nominee this week is actually Liz Truss for defending parts of our sceptred Isle against Biden and Pelosi's attempt to annex Northern Ireland off to have a united Ireland of their dreams. I think she's doing a really good job at the moment.
All good nominees today, but I'm going to have to go with Benjamin Butterworth, because Ainsley Harriott, good on him. He saved his sister at the Chelsea Flower Show, and what could have been a tragedy turned into triumph for the TV chef. Union jackass time now. Carol Malone, who's your jackass tonight?
Mine's the M&S store and everyone in it at Mortlake. There's a security guard at this store tried to chuck out a guy called Dave Kent, who was blind and who had his guide dog with him, and he tried to chuck them out of the store. Let's not forget, Marks and Spencer's is the company, the woke company, that changed the colour nude because they thought it might offend people of colour, and who also changed the name of the Sweeties, the Midget Gems, because it might offend people with dwarf. But they're very good with chucking blind people out of their shop.
Benjamin Butterworth, your nominee?
Well, mine is Rowan Atkinson. He threw a party for his girlfriend over the weekend, and he had apparently a hysterical firework display that terrified cats and dogs and pets and no doubt people for miles around.
God, you're no fun, are you? I wish I was there. It sounds like great fun.
Fireworks shouldn't be allowed. They're a nightmare.
Party pooper.
Boo. Lucy, your nominee.
Yes, mine is the Reverend Rob Wickham. This is the chap who stopped lovely Calvin Robinson from becoming a priest, all because Calvin didn't sign up to the ideology that Britain is institutionally racist.
Well, I'm going to have to go with Belinda de Lucy for that. Of course, Calvin Robinson will be back on the Superstar panel in his rightful place tomorrow night. And you know what? Shame on anyone who wouldn't want Calvin Robinson as part of their church, because what an asset he would be, especially because he's on a channel like this. Belinda de Lucy, Benjamin Butterworth, Carol Malone, thank you so much, my fabulous Superstar panel. I'll be back again tomorrow night from 9 p.m. Thank you for your company. Good night.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Further showers during the next 24 hours for many of us. Some clear spells in between the downpours overnight. A cool night to come as well under any clear skies. But low pressure dominating the weather at the moment. One to the north, one clearing away from the southeast. And that means it will remain pretty unsettled. Certainly some heavy rain around for the Midlands, central southern England, and then into the southeast during Monday evening. That only slowly pushing through by the early hours of Tuesday. Further showers just about anywhere else. Some more prolonged rain for northeast Scotland perhaps, but a few clear spells emerging, particularly in the north and particularly inland. And as a result, well, temperatures will fall away. A fresh start to Tuesday, but a bright start in many spots. Now, quite quickly, showers will get going once again, especially inland this time, and in the south they'll be very lively with a mix of hail and thunder for some. But away from the showers, a few bright spells, particularly in the west, particularly later on, and temperatures around average. 18 for London, 17 for Cardiff, 16 for Glasgow and Belfast. Now into the evening, a clearer slot of weather arrives from the west, but only for a time. Enough time to allow temperatures to dip away into the mid to low single figures for Scotland, for central parts of England and the east. But by the morning, further spells of rain push into the north and the west. And by this stage, we'll see a strengthening wind. So a wet and windy start for Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern and western England as well as Wales. Drier and brighter for the east of England, but even here it will turn cloudy and breezy by the afternoon and it will stay cool. But the persistent rain on Wednesday turns to showers by the afternoon, and on Thursday another spell of rain moves into northern areas pushing south, replaced again by showers. Drier on Friday.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot.